Hey young friends, Dr. Bill here. I'm so glad you could join me today. We're continuing our series of lessons on big names in the Bible. And today we're going to spend several weeks taking a look at a man named Elijah. Elijah was a prophet. And what we mean by that is God chose Elijah to be someone to speak to the people and to their rulers about what was right, about what God wanted from the people. Now, Elijah's story is woven into the stories of lots of different kings whose names and stories we find in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings. Now, to begin, Elijah was a pivotal figure in a time of great turmoil in Israel. After Solomon died, there was a battle for the throne for the people of Israel. Solomon's son, a man named Rehoboam, claimed to be king, and he was king. Nevertheless, there was a man named Jeroboam, the son of one of King Solomon's servants, and he turned against Rehoboam, and he sowed a lot of division and conflict amongst the Hebrew people. As a result, there was a great big divide. 10 tribes allied themselves with Jeroboam and his successors. They became known as the Northern Kingdom. 2 tribes remained loyal to Rehoboam and his descendants, and they became known as the Southern Kingdom. And so in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings, we find the stories of the kings both for the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. And we find in these stories that in both places there were some really, really good kings, and there were also some really, really bad kings. People who did evil things and who did not lead the people properly. Well, the story of Elijah starts with the king in the northern kingdom, a man named Ahab. And as the writer of 1 Kings makes clear, Ahab was a very bad king. He did many, many wicked things. As a result, God sent Elijah to Ahab with this message: because of all the terrible things that you have done, there will be no rain in the land until I say so. There will be no rain whatsoever. And as you might imagine, with no rain, eventually everything dries up and there's no food, and people begin to go hungry. Well, as soon as Elijah delivered that message, God sent him out into the desert, and there Elijah camped by a stream. He was able to drink the water from that stream. And every day God sent ravens to Elijah, and they brought food for him to eat. So as there was a time of great drought and famine in the land, God kept Elijah alive by giving him water to drink and food to eat. Eventually, however, that stream dried up, and God then sent Elijah to a town called Zarephath. And God said to Elijah, I want you to go find a widow in that town, and there you'll find out exactly what you need to do. So Elijah made the journey to the town of Zarephath, and there he met a widow. When he met the widow, he asked her if she would give him something to drink. And she did. She brought him some water. Elijah drank the water and then said, would it be possible for you to give me something to eat? And the widow said this: well, when you showed up, I was out gathering firewood. All I have at home is a handful of flour, and I was going to build a fire, take that flour, and make a cake for for my son and myself. We will eat that cake, and since there's no more flour, there'll be no more food, and we'll die." Well, Elijah persisted and said, "Why don't you make me a cake?" And so the woman took her flour, baked a cake, gave it to the prophet, and as the writer of 1 Kings tells us, that as long as Elijah stayed with this widow and her son, they always had just enough to eat. In connection with this widow, the writer of 1 Kings also tells us that the widow's son died very unexpectedly. God used Elijah to bring that son back to life. Now that's the beginning of Elijah's story. He kind of comes out of nowhere, and the beginning of his story is marked by some really big things. God telling Elijah to say to Ahab, "You are a wicked man." God providing for Elijah both by the stream and also at the widow's house. So here are some important lessons we can learn right from the start of Elijah's work and his ministry. First, God wants the leaders of his people to do the right thing. God wants kings and rulers and politicians to do what is right for most of the people, for all of the people, the most good for the most people. And when kings and rulers fail in that task, God usually sends someone to correct them, to remind them of what they should be doing. Elijah was just such a person. And by sending Elijah, God reminds us that what God is interested in is right relationships between all people. What God wants is for everybody to have a fair chance. God doesn't want leaders who favor one over the other. God wants leaders who will do the right thing. Secondly, from Elijah's story, we learn that God provides. In other words, God can take care of some of our most basic needs. For Elijah, that was food and water. And in the story of Elijah by the stream, we find that God took care of him, giving him water to drink and food to eat on a daily basis. In the story of Elijah and the widow, the same lesson shows up. God wants to take care of Elijah, providing him with enough to eat every single day. And so notice that God gave Elijah just enough for each day. And that enough was enough. Elijah had what he needed to stay alive. God did not provide Elijah with a $1 billion lottery ticket, didn't give him cars or fancy stuff. He said, "I will provide for you what you need to stay alive." And then the final thing from Elijah's life is that God used him to bring this widow's son back from the dead. That's an important lesson. Elijah shows us that God is interested and cares a lot about life. God wants to bring people to life. Now, certainly when we talk about God bringing people to life, the most important thing to remember here is that God wants to keep us alive on the inside. There are lots of things that make us dead on the inside, things that will take away from what God hopes for us in terms of what we will be and what kind of character we will have. God wants to give us life. He wants to keep us alive on the inside, helping us to grow into the kind of people that reflects God's mercy and kindness. So, that's it for today. Next week, we'll pick up with another important lesson from Elijah's life. In the meantime, I hope that you have a good rest of the week, and I certainly hope that I'll be seeing you soon. You take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.